Somewhere deep inside, you wonder why certain stories in the Bible feel so heavy. You're not looking for fear. You're looking for understanding. Tonight, this isn't about judgment or destruction. It's about what happens slowly inside a heart when love, compassion, and humility begin to fade. If you've ever worried that God is harsh or distant, this moment is for you. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah isn't about shock. It's about warning signs we often miss. And it speaks gently to tired souls who still want to believe God is patient, caring, and near. There is a quiet exhaustion that settles into the soul when faith feels heavy instead of comforting. You still believe. You still pray. But something inside you feels worn down, as if spiritual questions now carry more weight than peace. You read certain biblical stories and feel uneasy, not because you doubt God, but because you struggle to understand Him. You are not alone in that feeling. Many women carry it silently. They don't speak it out loud, because they fear sounding weak or faithless. Yet the truth is softer than that. You are tired, not rebellious. You are searching, not resisting. You want to trust God deeply, but you also want Him to feel safe. Stories like Sodom and Gomorrah can stir discomfort. They feel severe. They raise questions no one seems eager to sit with. Why destruction? Why judgment? Why does it feel so final? And quietly, you wonder if God could ever turn that same severity toward you when you're already trying your best just to hold on. That tension lives in many hearts. Especially in seasons of waiting. Especially when prayers go unanswered. Especially when life has already been unkind. You don't need more fear. You need reassurance that God understands human weakness, that He sees struggle without immediately condemning it. This is not a story meant to threaten you. It was never meant to crush tender hearts. It was meant to reveal something deeper about what happens when compassion disappears, when pride replaces humility, and when people stop seeing one another as human. You may feel spiritually tired, but your heart is still awake. You still care. You still feel. That alone tells a different story than guilt ever could. God is not offended by your questions. He is not impatient with your confusion. He does not turn away from weary faith. If this story has ever made you pull back emotionally, you are allowed to sit with it gently. There is no rush. No pressure to conclude anything tonight. Only space to breathe, to listen, and to understand at a pace that feels kind. You are not being evaluated. You are being invited into clarity. And clarity, when offered with tenderness, brings peace instead of fear. Many people carry an unspoken guilt when they feel unsettled by certain scriptures. They assume something must be wrong with them. Strong faith, they think, should never question. It should never hesitate. But real faith often does the opposite. It pauses. It reflects. It wrestles quietly. You may have heard this story explained in ways that felt harsh or simplistic. As if God destroyed a city suddenly, without patience or warning. As if mercy was absent. That version leaves little room for compassion, and even less room for tired believers who already feel fragile. It's okay if you've struggled with that. It does not mean your faith is weak. It means your heart still values gentleness. You are not rejecting God. You are seeking to understand Him more fully. Many women reach a stage in life where surface-level answers no longer comfort them. They've lived long enough to know pain is complex. People are complicated. Healing is slow. And growth is rarely instant. So when faith narratives feel sharp or rushed, they no longer fit the lived reality of your soul. You might even feel embarrassed for wanting softer explanations. But softness does not mean compromise. Compassion does not mean denial of truth. It means truth delivered in a way that heals instead of harms. God never asked His children to ignore their emotional responses. Scripture itself is filled with lament, confusion, and honest questions. Silence and sorrow are not foreign to faith. They are woven into it. If you've ever wondered whether God sees the difference between stubborn rebellion and quiet brokenness, the answer is yes. Always yes. He is not a distant observer tallying mistakes. He is deeply aware of intention, struggle, and heart posture. This shared struggle is more common than most people admit. Many sit in pews or watch sermons while holding unanswered questions in their chest. They smile outwardly while internally asking for reassurance that God is still gentle with the weary. Tonight is not about fixing that struggle. It's about honoring it, naming it, letting it exist without shame. Because once shame is removed, understanding can finally begin to breathe. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is often misunderstood because it's told without context of God's patience. Long before destruction, there was warning. Long before judgment, there was opportunity. God did not act impulsively. He observed a pattern that had hardened over time. The deeper issue was not a single behavior. It was a complete erosion of compassion. The city became known for cruelty, arrogance, and indifference to suffering. The vulnerable were ignored. Hospitality vanished. Power replaced humility. Mercy disappeared. These were not momentary failures. They were sustained choices that shaped an entire culture. God's concern was never about punishing weakness. It was about stopping harm that had become normalized. When kindness disappears completely, people suffer. And God has always taken suffering seriously. He hears the cries that are ignored by society. He notices when dignity is stripped away and cruelty is excused. This perspective changes the tone of the story. It shifts it from fear to warning. Not warning meant to scare, but to awaken. God's desire has always been restoration, not destruction. But restoration requires openness. When hearts close fully, healing becomes impossible. God's patience is long, but it is not passive. Love intervenes when harm becomes permanent. And even then, God listened when Abraham pleaded for mercy. That alone reveals his character. He allowed intercession. He invited compassion into the conversation. This was never about God being eager to destroy. It was about him grieving a place where love had completely died. For weary believers, this matters deeply. It means God is not waiting to condemn you for imperfections. He is watching for humility, compassion, and willingness to remain open. Those qualities protect the soul. God's nearness is often felt in restraint, not force. In patience, not pressure. In warning whispered gently, not shouted harshly. He speaks long before consequences appear. Understanding this story through that lens softens it. It becomes less about fear and more about the value God places on mercy, care, and responsibility toward one another. There is healing in realizing that God's heart is not triggered by your weakness. It is moved by it. When you feel tired, uncertain, or emotionally thin, you are not closer to judgment. You are closer to compassion. Let this truth settle quietly. God is not scanning your life for reasons to withdraw love. He is present in your waiting, your confusion, and your unanswered prayers. The story reminds us that God intervenes when harm becomes entrenched, not when hearts are struggling but still open. That distinction matters. Especially for women who carry self-blame easily. You are not Sodom. You are not hardened beyond care. You are someone still listening. Still hoping. Still seeking peace. Allow yourself to feel God's presence as gentle, not looming. Close, not cold. Healing begins when fear loosens its grip and trust returns slowly. God does not rush healing. He sits with it. And He sits with you. Waiting seasons often feel like weakness, but they are not. They are protection. They are preparation. They are places where God prevents harm you cannot yet see. The strength God builds in you is quiet. It does not shout. It does not demand recognition. It steadies you from the inside. This story reminds us that when love disappears, destruction follows. But when love remains, even in exhaustion, hope stays alive. Your endurance matters. Your softness matters. Your continued willingness to care matters. God values these things deeply. You are not failing. You are forming. And formation is slow by design. If there is one thing to carry forward, let it be this. God's heart leans toward mercy more than judgment. He notices when compassion survives hardship. He sees when love continues quietly. You are not alone in your questions. You are not wrong for wanting gentler understanding. God is not threatened by your need for clarity. Rest here. Let the story settle softly. And remember that a tired faith still held with honesty is deeply precious to God. You are seen. You are safe. And you are not forgotten.